there. The Bushman and the Shining One. Here's an old story that Spencer Maxwell, my great uncle, used to tell. He worked in East Africa for 40 years. Maxwell Adventist Academy in Nairobi, Kenya was so named to honor him. The nomadic Bushman tribes live in Africa's Kalahari Desert. They move from place to place hunting for food and shelter. Skilled in desert survival, they are superb trackers who can read the land, and they often use ostrich eggs as canteens and sometimes fill the eggs with water, seal the holes with beeswax, and bury the eggs for later use. A unique trait about Bushmen is their eating habits. It's not often that a tribe can catch a good meal, so when they kill some large game, such as an antelope, the tribe eats the entire animal in one sitting. The Bushmen's bellies grow rather large, so large that they make both the men and women look pregnant. After eating all the available food, the tribe hibernates until all the food is digested. Sometimes it takes days, and then they wake up and hunt for food again. The Bushman's language is unusual too. It's explosive, with many pops and clicks of the tongue. In the written language, the tongue clicks are indicated by an X, followed by an exclamation mark. Sometime in the early 1950s, a member of one of these Bushman tribes had an unusual dream. In the morning, he still remembered it. When he was alone with his family, he said, "Last night I had a dream." They were interested, so he continued, "I saw a bright light. As my eyes adjusted, I noticed the light was in the form of some being. The Shining One told me many curious things. Most of the time, he talked about a people of the book and said that I was to learn from them. Oh, I almost forgot. He taught me to talk real funny. Listen." He went around pointing to objects and calling them funny names. His family laughed to hear such strange sounds. The Shining One said, "These funny words will help me communicate with the people of the book. To find these funny talking people, the Shining One told me to walk east." It all seemed so mysterious, yet so important. He couldn't stop thinking about the dream. Eventually, he shared it with the other members of his tribe. They decided that he should find these people of the book. So he set out. He walked and he walked for about 150 miles until he came to a village. These villagers were not Bushmen, but Bantus. They were a taller race and couldn't speak his language. Traditionally, Bantus and Bushmen were enemies. But the little Bushman reminded himself that the Shining One had sent him to find a Bantu to learn about the book. And suddenly he remembered, "I'd better talk funny now." A villager saw the little Bushman and hailed him, saying, "I see you." That is the way a Bantu says hello. "I see you," the little Bushman answered in kind. The villager was amazed. "How is it that you speak my language?" The little Bushman told the Bantu about his dream. "The Shining One taught me your language," he explained, and then he asked, "Are you one of the people of the book?" The Bantu was a Christian. He immediately knew what the little Bushman meant. "Yes, we are," he said. Let me take you to our pastor." So he led him to the pastor's home, and there the little bushman repeated his story about the Shining One who sent him on such a long journey. When he had finished, he asked, "Are you the people of the book?" The pastor smiled, went to his bookshelf, and pulled down a black book. As soon as the little bushman saw it, he said, "That's it! It was the Holy Bible! That's the very book I saw in my dream. You must be the people of the book. May I learn from you?" Well, naturally, the pastor was happy. He arranged for the bushman to sleep in his house that night, saying, "We'll begin studying first thing in the morning." At first, the little bushman couldn't get to sleep. He was more accustomed to sleeping under a bush than on a soft bed. And that night, while he slept, the Shining One appeared to him again in a dream. He told him, "The pastor is not one of the people of the book because he doesn't worship on the seventh day. Look for a pastor named Moyo." It was all rather strange to the little bushman. He really didn't know what to do. He only knew that his journey wasn't over. Where was he to find Pastor Moyo? The next morning, the little bushman thanked the pastor for his hospitality. Then, speaking quite politely, he said, "I had another dream. The Shining One told me you are not one of the people of the book because you don't keep the seventh day holy." The pastor grew angry and said, "I showed you the Bible, and you said that's it, because that's the book you dreamed about. I must be a man of the book. Now let's study as planned." The little bushman politely insisted that the pastor was not a person of the book. "The Shining One told me that the people of the book worship on the seventh day of the week. Do you know a man named Moyo?" The pastor refused to help. All he would say was, "Our village chief believes the same as I do. How can the chief be wrong? Let's go talk with him. Maybe he can help you understand your dream." So the pastor took the little bushman to the chief, and the chief said, "I have translators, but from what I hear, you don't need one. I want to hear you speak in my language." The little bushman smiled politely and related his story about his dream, his encounter with the Shining One, his 150-mile hike to find the people of the book, and his meeting with the pastor in the chief's village. "I was so happy to discover the book is the Holy Bible and that your pastor owns one." And then he told about his second dream and asked, "Do you know anyone who worships on the seventh day?" Actually, the chief's wife worshipped on the seventh day, but he was embarrassed to say so. He detested her religion. The pastor hadn't said anything either because he feared that all his church members would leave his church if he directed the little bushman to her. With no members, he'd have no church to lead, and not wanting to lose his position, he lied. To no avail, the little bushman questioned the chief about a people who worshipped on the seventh day, and then he asked, "Do you know where Pastor Moyo is?" The chief noticed that a large crowd of village folk was gathering. They disliked Bushmen because they were known to be dangerous, and when offended, Bushmen kill the offender. Some had been hurt by Bushmen, others had relatives who had. and some wanted revenge. Others were amazed to see a bushman politely conversing with their chief in their own language. Old resentment surfaced when they perceived that the bushman was disagreeing. As anger spread through the crowd, the chief feared it could turn into a violent mob. Having decided not to tell the truth about his wife, he was uncertain what to do next. As the villagers grew more restless, he feared for the little bushman's safety. Soon, if he didn't do something, they would turn into a mob. Not wanting to be responsible for what might happen to the bushman, the chief made a decision. He reasoned that if the little bushman were found to have done nothing illegal, perhaps the crowd would calm down. So he sent the bushman to the white man. In South Africa, white people were seen by the indigenous people as just another tribe. Usually they dealt with legal matters. In his village, a white South African of British ancestry handled legal matters. He told the crowd to follow the little bushman to the white man's home. He'll determine whether the bushman has broken the law. Seeing that the crowd was temporarily satisfied, the chief felt pleased with himself. He'd gotten rid of the bushman without bloodshed. Let the white man pacify the crowd, he thought to himself. The disgruntled crowd entered the white man's courtroom. Escorted by the pastor, the bushman came to the front and began to relate his story. The Englishman was deeply impressed. Before him stood a bushman who claimed that a shining one had taught him in a dream how to speak with the Bantus in their own language. He had to admit that the bushman could speak it perfectly. This gave credence to the rest of the story. Just to make sure, he questioned the bushman, but was unable to trip him up. He stuck to his story. Then the bushman asked his advice. The white man thought about the legality of the story and found that no law had been broken. Hitting the podium with his gavel, he ordered the crowd to leave. Reluctantly, the villagers obeyed, and soon only the pastor and the bushman remained. The Englishman told the pastor he was free to go. "Do you know where I can find the people of the book?" the bushman asked. The Englishman was at a loss for words. That night, since no one would befriend him, the little bushman did what most bushmen do. He slept in the bush. Before he lay down, he prayed, "Shining One, please lead me to the real people of the book. It seems no one else will." In his sleep, he had another dream. The Shining One said, "You'll know Pastor Moyo because he owns a set of 4 volumes that are really 9. The next morning when he awoke, he saw a cloud. In most places, if you see a cloud, you think nothing of it. But in certain drier parts of Africa, clouds are special because they are so rare. When the little bushman approached it, it moved. And as he followed it, he realized it was the answer to his prayer. The Shining One was guiding him to Pastor Moyo. He followed the cloud for another 120 miles until he reached a town near a railway station located on the border of Rhodesia, now called Zimbabwe. After the cloud had led him into the town, it vanished. The bushman rejoiced, knowing he was near the real people of the book. Walking through the town, he asked everyone he met if they knew Pastor Moyo. Eventually, someone led him to a pastor's home, and when the little Bushman knocked on the door, a man opened it. "Are you Pastor Moyo?" the Bushman asked. "I am," the pastor smiled. "How do you know my name?" "It's a long story," the Bushman retold it. "Can you show me the book?" Pastor Moyo reached for his Bible. "That's it," the Bushman confirmed. "Do you worship on the seventh day?" "I do," the pastor replied. The little Bushman beamed. "One last question," he said excitedly. "Can you show me the 4 volumes that are really 9? Pastor Moyo went to his bookshelf and took down a set of Ellen G. White's Testimonies for the Church. The 9 volumes were bound into 4 books. Unable to contain himself, the Bushman exclaimed, "Those are the very books I saw in my dream. My journey is finally at an end. At last I found the real people of the book." He asked Pastor Moyo to teach him. They studied the Bible and Ellen White's writings. The Bushman believed what he was taught. He asked Pastor Moyo to visit his people and teach them. The Bushman became the first of his people to be baptized as a Seventh-day Adventist. Soon there was a Bushman church of about 20 members. Because their lives are hard, Bushmen don't live long. A few years after his 270-mile quest to find the people of the book, the little Bushman died at the ripe old age of 50-something. If it hadn't been for the little Bushman's dream about the Shining One and his trek to find Pastor Moyo, it might have taken much longer for the Bushman to become Seventh-day Adventists. This story has been told and retold time again, for it is truly a remarkable testimony of God's guidance in human history. Now, like we do with most of our children's stories, let us open our Bible. Let us think, are there accounts in the Bible where things like this happened? Such as, do you know the verse in Matthew 7? "Beware of false prophets, which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravening wolves." Why, it's very important we keep that in mind. They're going to be people that say they believe the Bible. They carry a Bible. They teach the Bible. Yet they're in sheep's clothing. How are we going to know? Well, the Bible tells us how we're going to know. In Isaiah chapter 8, verse 20, it says, "To the law and to the testimony, if they speak not according to this word, it is because there is no light in them." Oh, isn't that wonderful? That's how we can know if they're a people of the book. Now, let's talk about this law. We knew in our story there was one of the 10 commandments, the law of God, that the false prophet wasn't following. Do you remember which one it was? That's right. It was the 4th commandment. Let us read it together. "Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. But the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the seventh day, the Sabbath day, and hallowed it. Now, there was another lesson we learned in the dream. Do you remember? In the Bible, not only in our story did the Bushman have a dream, but in the Bible, several of God's people and his prophets had dreams. I was thinking of this particular one. Do you remember about Joseph and Mary and baby Jesus? Matthew chapter 2. And when they were departed, behold, the angel of the Lord appeareth to Joseph in a dream, saying, Arise, and take the young child and his mother, and flee into Egypt, and be thou there until I bring thee word, for Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. And just like the Bushman had another dream, so did Joseph. Matthew, same chapter 2, verse 19 through 22, Joseph gets another dream where it is said in the Bible, But when Herod was dead, behold, an angel of the Lord appeareth in a dream to Joseph in Egypt, saying, Arise, and take the young child and his mother, and go into the land of Israel, for they are dead which sought the young child's life. And he arose and took the young child and his mother, and came into the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus did reign in Judea in the room of his father Herod, he was afraid to go thither. Notwithstanding, being warned of God in a dream, he turned aside into the parts of Galilee. So, let us briefly look at some of these lessons we learned from the little Bushman. We know that God spoke to the Bushman in dreams, just as he spoke to the prophets in the Bible and to Joseph in dreams. God showed the Bushman what was the truth with a clear sign. And in this account, what were those signs? How would the Bushman know the way? Well, they would know if the person was keeping the law and the spirit of prophecy. We learned there are false prophets among us, and that's how we test them. Are they keeping the law? And do they keep the spirit of prophecy? Each of us will have trials. We must seek Jehovah God and his divine Son, Jesus Christ, to guide us. And we know that whatever comes up in our path, whatever choice we have to make, we know it will align perfectly with the Bible. That's our children's story for the day.
I love that. But I got a little distracted. I was making a note and I missed why the people were really angry with him in the beginning.